Hello, welcome everyone to the 43rd episode of our Navigating Turbulent Times series here at the Iwfm. And not only is it our 43rd episode, it's actually our year anniversary of running NTT. So the program has been running for a year. That's been supported not only by our members, non-members, but also our community groups that have seen many thousands of the professionals that you are join us on our weekly episodes. And I just want to say a massive thank you for that. So today's episode, number 43, I've already mentioned, is going to be looking at the market outlook for 2021 for workplace and FM, looking at the trends, challenges and opportunities for workplace and facilities management moving forward. So I just move on the slides. I'm Peter Brogan, Head of Research and Insight here at the Iwfm, and many of you would have seen me host many of our episodes over the 43 that we've conducted that have looked at a range of topics. And today I've got the pleasure of hosting, as well as go on to John in a moment, but also present our Outlook survey findings from our recent research here at the Iwfm. So not only am I hosting, I'm presenting today, so a dual role. So fingers crossed, everyone, for me. But from that point of view, I just want to remind viewers, listeners, that this is being recorded, it is live, and will be cascaded out soon after we've finished today. So please have a look out for the recording, as well as the reports that are mentioned in today's episode. So moving on, you can kindly see there on your screens, and also with the camera up there, John Raspin, Partner and Director, Energy and Environment, Frost & Sullivan, is going to join us on today's episode, looking at trends, opportunities, challenges with the work that Frost & Sullivan do, which is stellar work, I hasten to add. But John, I'd like to just bring you in here. As many people know, I don't do long bios. Your bio is on the website if people are interested, and obviously LinkedIn. But just from the perspective, without a spoiler alert, what little bit of an introduction about yourself, but also what the viewers, listeners will be hearing from you today.
Yeah, thanks, Peter, and thanks for the introduction. John Raspin here. Good afternoon, everybody. Great to be here with a chance to talk today. Thanks, Peter, personally for the invitation to join, and to Iwfm for that opportunity. I'm at Frost & Sullivan, as you said. I head up our energy and environment practice, but my principal focus myself as a hands-on analyst and consultant is in the FM space. I've been working in and around FM for nearly 25 years now. It feels like a very long time. Probably didn't do anything worth mentioning before that, so let's just keep that as my sort of main career highlight. But yeah, looking forward to sharing a few thoughts. We're a firm of analysts, so we like to quantify opportunity. So I'll talk a little bit about quantitatively the direction of travel we see the industry, but we're also very focused on trends and opportunities. So we'll talk about some of the big things impacting the FM and workplace sectors, where we see opportunity beginning to come out to reappear, what we see recovery look like. A few kind of principal areas of focus. We'll be talking about technology, definitely an area that's been accelerated by the pandemic, and likewise sustainability, a kind of area that was really beginning to rise to the top of FM offerings in the last few years, and another area that we see as having been really accelerated by what we've seen in the last 12 months or so. So very much looking forward to it.
No, thank you, John, and we're lucky to have you as well. So just want to remind listeners, viewers, we do have a Q&A section dedicated today after you've heard from myself and John. So we would encourage you to send your questions in. We try and make that as interactive as possible. We do want the questions from you, so from what you hear today. But I'm just going to move on. So John, we're going to hear from you later, so please come back, and we'll speak to you later. So as I hit my mouse too soon, I'm going to talk to you today really as a market outlook preview of our market outlook 2021 survey report that's soon to be published on our website. So today's episode is really giving you a bit of a sneak peek preview, as you can see on your screens there, about some of the results that have come out of today's survey, and there's a nice segue synergy with what John will be going into detail about some of the trends and opportunities within the profession moving forward. So as you're joining us, and I appreciate some of you may have completed the survey, so thank you for that. But for people that are not aware what the Outlook survey is, it's basically a snapshot of UK workplace and facilities management market and how it's performed over the last year. So it's a survey, and the factors affecting it over the last 12 months as the next 12 and the next 12 months. So we do this on a yearly basis. We do benchmark it, and there are findings in the report that benchmark against 2020, which a report we didn't publish, I'm afraid, because of COVID, but we have benchmarked in the report. So would encourage you to look at the report once it's on our website, which is shortly. So as mentioned, it was a survey. It was conducted January to 21st of February this year. As you can see, just a snapshot there, we had an increase in our participation on this survey, which we've seen on many of our surveys over the last 2 years. And I want to thank our members for participating in our Insight program. So thank you for that. But even there, the numbers tell a story in its own right, that we had 212 people respond to the survey in 2020. This year we had 435, which was actually a record number of responses for the survey that we've been running the Outlook survey now for the last 3 years. So from that point of view, again, just want to say a thank you for those that participated. Now, as I say, this is really a key insight overview for the purpose of time, purpose of the webinar. The report goes into greater detail around different demographic profile questions, segmented by different sectors. Also, as I say, the trend analysis over the years, particularly a comparison with 2020, as I mentioned, which weren't published, but actually give a benchmark against results pre-COVID and also post-COVID as well, which is interesting in its own right. But as I say, purpose of the day, I'm just going to go over some of the key insights that the report is telling us, and hopefully encourage you to further read and have a deeper dive into the results in terms of what the report goes into. But within the report, we ask about the UK FM market over the last 12 months. And as you can see from the stats there, we had a third indicate that it had improved with 33%, but 39% sadly saying it getting worse, and that was further reflected in a decrease in the FM budget of 30%, and that may resonate with our members that were on the webinar today if that was the case from your own experience, but this was coming back from the responses. So if we further look at future gaze in terms of FM market over the next 12 months, there is a lot of positivity that 58% believe it will improve. So there is optimism there is positivity coming out. However, always a positive to a negative, but I'll try and finish on the positive, that 19% felt that it would get worse. So there is 2 in 10 of respondents almost indicating that it could be getting worse. And as I say, these results are split down into different sectors, whether it's client side or service providers. So the report does go into that, but as I said, today is a snapshot of the results. And however, on a positive, as promised, 45% felt there would be an increase in turnover in the next 12 months. So again, optimism is there throughout the survey moving forward. Now, John mentioned it, and it will be in his slides without another spoiler alert, but the influence of technology, and we've seen this in our own research, not only with reports that are on the website linked to Microsoft and Planon that we've recently launched around data. We looked at a number of factors, and what was really positive, as you can see there, that 69% of respondents felt that changes in technology will have a positive influence on the profession moving forward, not only in the last 12 months, but also going forward. And I think John's presentation today will go in deeper dive into exactly what those opportunities are. So there's, as I say, there's a nice segue from these results into John's presentation. Also, there has been an increase from the 2020, which isn't demonstrated on the slide here, but is emphasised in the report. The percentage points moved from 6% to 19% that feel that over the next 12 months, there will be an increase in positivity when it comes to the state of the UK economy. And I know there is the backdrop of the factors of COVID, which I've mentioned already, but also Brexit, which I will come on to later, that is also mentioned in the key conclusions. Now, as you mentioned there, impact, as I mentioned there, I should say impact of the pandemic, not only has this indicated, but it's changed the flexible working strategy of 84% of our respondents, and also the use of space, so the reduction of space occupancy, 58%. And we know from previous episodes on our NTT series, as well as guidance and return to work, that many of our members, and I appreciate there's non-members on that, face this challenge at the moment in terms of their working strategy moving post-COVID to actually what do they do with their space occupancy, and that's one of the challenges that we're all facing with this term hybrid working. So that came out in the survey as well, in terms of particularly a high percentage around the use of the flexible working strategy for our members. So sorry, I just jumped ahead there to over keen. Now, in terms of our survey results, I'll just go back. First time we asked questions about diversity and inclusion, and this is a massive area, topic area, subject area, whatever the right terminology is, for many of our profession and our membership, as well as our insights program moving forward. So it's the first time we ask questions about D&I within the Outlook survey, which again, we try and evolve the survey each year to ensure that it's on topic and dealing with the market factors, forces that drive the sector. So views and experiences on D&I. For FM on a positive, 55% indicated there was an increased awareness in the FM market, and 74% within their own organisation. So that's positive. We'd like the figures to be higher, of course, but I think that's a challenge that's been set, and many boards up and down the country, particularly in the UK and globally, are looking at their D&I programme and makeup of how they progress with that topic area going forward. So the focus for the next 12 months, as indicated there, is 58% say it will increase, and 33% a third indicating it will remain the same. So again, the challenge there is around this topic area. And as I say, as an institute, it's something that we are evolving, something we're looking at in our own topic areas, and something we touched upon in our own NTT series around how do we make this a career of choice, which is a program that we're heavily involved in for everybody. So again, D&I is an important topic, not only for the profession, but the institute moving forward. Now, I've tried to do the key findings in a summary for you, but again, trying to entice you to go and read the report, which again, as I say, goes into a lot more deeper dive than I'm doing on the webinar today. But today's to give you a flavour, hence the term preview. There's no doubt the events of the last 12 months have clearly had a significant impact or negative impact on the health of the FM market. But then again, there has been some winners and losers in terms of the market because of the economic disruption of COVID-19. So when I look at the positive winners, definitely cleaning and security are sectors that are coming out that have been higher gained in terms of its own reputation, obviously through COVID and its importance. So again, security and cleaning came out in the survey as an area of some parts of the market that have definitely increased in its need. There's also a sense that the events of last year's helped to raise the FM's profile, and we've certainly seen that as FM about the return to work never actually left work for many of our members. And this has also highlighted the fact about how FM is across many different workspaces, not only shiny offices, but we've demonstrated that on the NTT episodes across and our own awards around many workspace settings, from manufacturing right through to hospitals. It's actually shine a light on our industry, and hopefully as an institute we've tried to push that through difficult times to really highlight the importance of what you guys do out there. So in terms of your day-to-day roles, and the importance to not only the through COVID but the UK economy going forward. And when looking forward, the FM market might perform over the next 12 months. as I say, the optimism is there. The majority of respondents in this year's survey expect the market to improve. So you saw the percentage there earlier. Definitely there is optimism around how the market will improve over the next 12 months. So that came out in the survey as well. So for instance, the events of the last 12 months will have some longer term effects, and I touched upon it within the survey, and it came out particularly, as I say, the survey and the report goes down into split by different types of organisation. But for example, the client side respondents reported changes to their flexible working policies and reduction in space requirements, which heavily came out for client side respondents. But as we know, that is impacting many of our profession up and down the country. So that is a challenge. As mentioned already, factors that are shaping FM, technology continues to be seen as the positive influence on the FM market and individual organisations. And again, that is benchmarked against other factors in the report, but also further highlighted in some of the research pieces that are on the Iwfm website. I would encourage you to look at the Microsoft guidance, as well as our recently launched Plan On guide that looked at the influence of data. So they all have a segue to technology in some ways, as well as the support of our technology special interest group, I hasten to add. Excuse me. Another massive factor is about climate change and sustainability. Another two factors that John will be going into, not only technology but sustainability. It continues to be seen as a positive driver for change, and it will be interesting to see if this increases. And it's something that we would like to see increase through our own sustainability special interest group and our own sustainability survey, as well as our own policy work with COP26 at the end of the year. Is something as an institute that we will be striving for and ensuring that's high up the agenda, not only for our insights work, but guidance we're giving back to our members. So for us, it's a paramount and important subject area that we will keep pursuing in our insights program. And I finally got to the B word of Brexit. Brexit continues to attract more negative sentiment, and it will be interesting to see what impact it has over the 12 months' time. I still think that's a little bit of a unknown, to coin that phrase. I think that is something that still many came out in the survey, that many businesses are still trying to look at Brexit and it's probably longer term impact on its business. So two massive factors, major forces that impacting the results on this survey. Yes, COVID-19, but also Brexit. And from that point of view, there are two factors that are analysed throughout the report and something that evidently came out in the report as key market challenges for our industry moving forward. So on a positive, I touched upon it earlier around the diversity and inclusion, and we included it for the first time in the survey. And it generally had a positive picture of the FM market, with the majority of respondents, it was close to 3/4, indicated that there had been increased awareness of these issues within their organisations. And this is something that, as I've mentioned already, we will continue to pursue as an institute moving forward when it comes to diversity inclusion. As mentioned, we've touched upon the subject within our NTT programme so far, but we will continue to look at this in terms of not only our research programme, but also some of the guidance and collaboration we do moving with various different bodies moving forward. But there'll be more news on that as the year progresses. So as you've seen in my slides, I've had the front cover of the report throughout there just to encourage you to know when it's on our website, and that will be shortly. Ideally, it will be this week. I've been informed that encourage you to have a read of the report. It will be housed on the insight pages, and from that point of view, as I say, you can go into a deeper dive into some of the top level findings I've gone through today. Again, I've only scratched the surface on that, hopefully giving you a bit of feedback, certainly around what our respondents were telling us about the market outlook. And it's very interesting, as I say, to benchmark against some of the 2020 comparisons which the report does. So as I say, this was very much a market preview, outlook preview of the key findings without going to a complete deep dive of the findings. I encourage you to read the report. As I say, will be on the website shortly. But that's the market outlook for 2021 with its key findings. Again, I encourage Q&A for this session if anyone's got any questions linking to the survey, and also be in contact with myself or my team at Iwfm if you have any further questions around the outlook survey. We're always happy to help. But as I say, I encourage you to have a look at the report once it's available on the website. So as promised, the whole episode isn't the host and me talking today. I like to bring back John in. I can see he's rejoined us, so that's a relief. So hello again, John. To look at the UK facility management market, near to mid-term trends and opportunities. And as John already alluded to, technology and sustainability is a theme through his presentation. So John, I will pass over to you. I will be back for the Q&A. So once again, encourage viewers, listeners to send your questions in. Me and John are here to answer as many of your questions. So John, over to you.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, no, thank you very much, and really enjoyed hearing the summary of your Outlook project that you were talking about there. Obviously, some really interesting things there, and it sounds like there's a lot of detail in the full study that I'm sure will be extremely interesting. But as you said, I think we're quite well aligned, certainly in terms of the kind of the main conclusions and points of focus. I think that was really interesting to hear. I also enjoyed seeing the stats you showed at the beginning on opinions on kind of rates of recovery, what the impact has been on the market, and so on. And we can maybe come back to some of that as I'm presenting Frost and Sullivan content relating to impact on markets, because I think there's some common ground there, but perhaps also a few areas where we might see the outlook slightly differently to some of your members. So that could be interesting. Yep, looks like I have got control of the slide. So let's jump straight in. I mentioned before, we're a firm of analysts, so we do like to look at things quantitatively as well as qualitatively. This chart is not particularly pretty, but I suppose there's probably no new news here to us. It's at least 2020 obviously is now in the rearview mirror. But there are a few important things to point out here. We did see significant contraction of FM spending in the UK, using the UK market as a reference point here and as an example, because I know we're mostly got a UK-based audience today, but interestingly, this would have looked relatively similar anywhere else in Europe, and most of the world has seen sort of similar issues in FM markets. But what we saw last year, 2020, triggered by the COVID pandemic, of course, total contraction of the market, or total FM outsourced spending in 2020 of just under 6% contraction, so 5.8% down, which, let's not forget, for a market that doesn't have the luxury of operating on huge margins, that's a big setback for the industry. So obviously a lot of companies will have been hit very hard by that. Not equally felt by companies, not equally felt by customer sectors, etc. So we can come back to that in a minute and talk about where that impact has been felt and what kind of recovery profiles will look like in different parts of the industry. But overall, obviously, that's a significant knockback. One thing we now know, latest UK figures for GDP, are that the actual economy shrank by close to 10% last year. So I suppose the slightly positive news there is that FM spending did actually outperform the overall economy slightly, but obviously it's been pretty tough. And let's not forget, this is a market which is a very significant outsourced spending. I'm using US currency here, by the way, which I do apologize. We're an American-owned company, so it's the international currency we use in all our work. But about $40 billion spending on outsourced FM in the UK per year. But it's a market where growth recently has been relatively hard to find. There has been growth in the market, but we've not been seeing a sort of rapid expansion in recent years. So quite a significant setback, what we've just been through. We do see a return to growth in spending in 2021. The market will expand again this year, but we don't see spending getting back to 2019 levels until next year, until 2022, and then after that some sort of small but steady growth through to 2025. So that suggests a significant bounce back and recovery, but not necessarily returning to sort of super buoyant conditions. So things are going to be a little bit tough for a few years to come, but at least we will see that sort of uptick in spending and opportunities, particularly for certain types of model, delivery model, for example. We see Iwfm, more integrated service contracts outperforming overall growth, so growing more strongly than single services, for example. We see technical services growing more strongly than soft services during that period, for example. But we'll come back to a few of these things as we go forward. I think just, I don't want to, obviously we are still living in a deeply COVID impacted market environment at the moment. I don't want to harp backwards too much, but I think it is still quite important to look at some of the challenges that that COVID threw at us in the last 12 months or so, and some of which are sort of still impacting us now. I've already talked a bit about the market decline in 2020. For a lot of companies, that meant really significant business development challenges with diminished sales pipelines, of course. It was very difficult not just to keep clients renewing, but certainly finding new business was challenging. Largely, there were some companies that reported strong growth and sort of interesting opportunities for new business last year, but by and large, it was a tough environment. And I think most of what you see on this slide, people will be fairly familiar with. We obviously had all the kind of the cleaning and safety challenges that the market had to deal with, and hearing Peter talk earlier about cleaning and security as two sort of example areas of business that stayed fairly strong last year. I think that's absolutely right, and certainly something we see as well. But by and large, when you look at the wider industry, it was still tough, and these were issues that companies had to deal with extremely quickly while trying to also keep workforces motivated, keep training moving along, so that sort of workforce knew how to operate in a set of conditions that we'd never seen before, etc. And of course, there were significant financial constraints on companies. So it was, we had an awful lot of stuff thrown at us in the last 12 months, which I think by and large, when we look backwards, actually, that some companies have come out of it in worse shape than others. That's inevitable. But I think overall, actually, given that this was not something that anyone had really seen coming or was especially prepared for, I think actually the industry coped with things remarkably well. Overall, I think when we look at all the different industry sectors and how different parts of the market were impacted by the pandemic, this is a slide that we put together sort of towards the end of last year, and it is obviously more looking at the impact on the market in these different customer groups at that point in time, and not necessarily telling us about the recovery profile. So as a sort of starting point, we're looking at where we saw the deepest impact last year. I think it's no great surprise if you look to the right-hand side of this slide that the biggest negative impact was felt in areas of the economy that were either stopped or massively slowed down. I think services to tourism and leisure, really tough. Aerospace, travel, transport, and so on were deeply hit. Whereas there was actually more positive activity from the healthcare sector, from some of the kind of chemicals and materials and food spaces and so on, where the kind of the pressure on customer businesses was high. The need to kind of keep business continuity at full speed was important, and there were some quite positive opportunities. Retail kind of somewhere in the middle, because the retail is a fairly complex industry these days, and there were huge pressure to kind of keep things moving in food retailing, for example. New challenges for kind of e-retail and online commerce sort of growing faster than we'd ever seen before, but at the same time, obviously, sort of high street retail and bricks and mortar shops, etc., kind of really in deep trouble and likely to face sort of further challenges well into this year. I think what's interesting is having kind of acknowledged that and been able to kind of navigate through that, and suppliers have had the opportunity to kind of push their business towards sort of certain customer sectors and try and minimize exposure to others. We're now at the point of looking at what the recovery rate looks like, and I think it's going to be important for anybody to be deep diving into individual customer sectors and looking in detail at what they're going to look like for the year ahead. I'm not going to have time to do all of that now, but just to sort of pick out a few things. I think tourism and transport is a really interesting one, because while it's been deeply hit by everything we've seen. At the same time, there's quite a lot of pent-up demand, particularly in tourism, for example. So I think that's more of a when rather than an if. We'll see a significant bounce back there. Whereas retail, for example, I think we're going to see some sort of fairly drastic changes in habits, which are likely to last us quite a long time. We're seeing already trends towards certainly e-commerce likely to stay very strong going forward, and I think more localized shopping, etc., likely to significantly change end customers' behavior, which will mean that the future of retail outlets and so on will start to look quite differently, quite different. So challenges there in that sector, but also opportunities. Wherever there's challenges, there's always opportunity. So working closely with customers to help them navigate their own future, I think, is going to become a really, really important part of what we see going forward. And that more consultative approach of service providers working with end customers, I think, is going to be absolutely critical going forward. When we talk about what's going to drive the recovery in 2021, I think the kind of the resetting of markets, the reopening of facilities, and the recovery of the broader economy is obviously going to be important. I think one thing that we've seen in the last 12 months, which is really important, is the acceleration of digitization strategies, the role of technology, as we were talking about before. I think, let's face it, one of the things that's probably frustrated the FM industry a bit in the last 5 to 10 years has been the relatively slow take-up of digital technology solutions in the market. A lot of companies have been driving innovation, working closely with customers to try and push the digital agenda, but have actually found quite a lot of inertia in the system, and it's been difficult to sort of drive forward with as much technology-based value addition as suppliers would have liked. But what we've seen with COVID is kind of some of the use cases getting stronger. So the need for kind of remote services, for connected devices, and so on, has come out of COVID and helped sort of accelerate that. So it's not like we've seen a new wave of innovation, but what we have seen is a new wave of use cases and drivers to allow that to happen. Very much the same kind of story with sustainability. We'll talk a bit about sustainability as we go through, but has become a really, really important factor for FM suppliers in the way they operate their own businesses, but also in the way they help customers achieve their sustainability goals. I think we saw a lot of talk right from the beginning of the pandemic about how important the green recovery was going to be when it came. But we've also seen kind of the diversification of what sustainability really means for companies, and we'll come back and talk about that again a little bit later. A lot of the buzz around at the moment around sort of the talk around healthy buildings, a nice sort of broad topic for people to latch onto, and it's it's a great term because it's got a bit of a double meaning. The health of the building and the kind of the physical assets and infrastructure, and at the same time creating healthy environments for building occupiers. We're seeing a lot of buzz around healthy buildings, both for service providers and technology providers in the industry. And I think, while last point on here on the positive side, I think it's, let's face it, it's not a great time to be involved in commercial real estate at the moment. But I think we have seen ongoing investment in critical infrastructure in the last 12 months, which will certainly continue. And while commercial real estate is really squeezed, what we are seeing is investment in high-end properties, which can sort of bring specific opportunities for kind of creative services to occupiers in those buildings. At a time where demand for real estate and office occupancy is likely to stay low, looking into the future, what we're likely to see and already are seeing is a kind of a move to the top. It becomes less economically attractive to invest in older building stock, so the opportunities for more sort of high-end properties can rise, and those sort of same high-end properties tend to be the better sort of opportunity areas in commercial offices for FM and workplace solutions as well. On the negative side, I think we've certainly seen a sort of I'm calling it a return of cost focus as a critical decision-making factor. I guess we would probably all agree that cost focus is not really something that's ever gone away, but it's a bit of a shame for the market, because over the last couple of years we had been beginning to see a bit of a realization on the customer side that the kind of relentless focus on squeezing suppliers on cost was not necessarily healthy for the industry, and there was a bit of an easing in the last couple of years on kind of cost pressure. I think inevitably with some of the financial constraints on customers, we will see cost focus staying as a critical factor over the next couple of years. Of course, you know, the economic recession is going to continue to affect spending in many sectors, as we were just talking about. Working from home is a really interesting one. I mean, I'm calling it working from home. It could be, you know, hybrid working, flexible working, whatever you want to call it. But working from places other than offices will delay occupancy growth, which will certainly stunt overall spending on FM and workplace solutions. But I think what's interesting here is we're starting to see a bit of a kind of a dichotomy of thinking between what companies want and what employees and staff want. And I think, you know, there's always been a little bit of that, of course. But I think, you know, largely at the moment when we're talking to big organizations, they're really keen to get staff back to work. You know, if we're talking about office workers, a lot of companies are very keen to get people back into offices, maybe not to the levels that they were at before, but certainly keen to get people back. But when you talk to employees, there's either reluctance to get back into the office, or just a feeling that sort of flexible remote working suits them better after all, and it's something that they want to pursue. So we've got this kind of, you know, opportunity for service providers to help companies encourage, nurture, and kind of bring people back into the office, but at the same time, sort of meeting the demands of employees with kind of delivering flexibility and so on. So there's a kind of a definite short-term opportunity to help companies get their head around that, get the balance right, get their sort of portfolio right, etc. Already talked a bit about the commercial real estate market. I mean, certainly at the mid and lower end, I think that, you know, the CRE market is going to stay fairly depressed for a little while. At the moment, our kind of latest thinking is that we probably won't see occupancy levels get back above around 80% of what they were in 2019 in the foreseeable future. So if that's you know, if that turns out to be true, that's approximately a 20% drop in demand for office space based on where we were only a couple of years ago. So obviously pretty significant. And likewise, at the same time, you know, construction, particularly the new construction market, we think will definitely remain dampened in 2021. So what does it what does it all mean for the trends that we've been tracking in FM? This is a slide that actually the core of the slide we've been using for a few years now, because most of the kind of the big trends that have been transforming the FM landscape in recent years are very much still there. What I've just tried to add on here is where we've seen in the last 12 months either increases, decreases, or no change in the importance, the overall kind of relative importance of that trend. I think overall all of these are still extremely important, and I don't want to downplay that, but we've definitely seen an increase in focus on sustainability, as I've talked about a little bit. And I think, you know, a lot of you who work in or around sustainability will be very familiar with the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, which make a really core element of a lot of companies' sustainability strategies these days, both FM providers, but also your customers who you're working with to help to meet their sustainable development goals. I think one of the things we've seen in the last couple of years, and again really accelerate in the last 12 months, is the broadening of the focus of sustainability away from being only focused on energy and environment, although those are still extremely important. Let's not forget, out of the 17 sustainable development goals, only about 6 or 7 are really environmentally focused. The rest are more social or community based, or you know, tackling poverty, gender inequalities, whatever it may be. And I think again there's a huge role that FM providers can play in helping customers meet their sustainability goals, not just in the fields of things like energy management and recycling and some of the kind of environmental areas that FM firms have been all over for the last few years, but moving into some of those much wider areas of sustainability, I think is going to be really important. On the tech side, things like IoT and cloud services, really important. In the UK, as an example, the fastest area of growth we saw in overall service spend last year was in remote services for HVAC, and particularly for refrigeration to the food sector. So no great surprise, but as I was talking about earlier, one of the reasons why we see this kind of acceleration in technology and innovation is not because new technology has become available, but because the use cases and reasons for investing in technology or different ways of doing things became stronger during COVID. And what we're now seeing is that kind of awareness increasing, that take-up increasing, and we think that will be an area that continues to be really important going forward. I think just want to talk a little bit about what it all means. We've been talking for a while about the kind of the shift in the market from of FM from problem solving to delivering positive outcomes. It's been very much the language of the FM industry for a few years now. But personally, I think it's never been more important. I think as we see the industry being squeezed and margins being tight. And no kind of imminent signs of really, really robust growth in the industry, then this kind of focus on adding value is going to be really, really important to get away from the sort of problem-solving mentality of the past if companies want to stay out of the cost trap and avoid getting drawn into to cost being by far the most important factor. And that's really what the focus on outcomes is all about when we talk about things like user experience and business productivity outcomes for customers, etc. But how do we deliver that? Well, it's about the convergence of the service trends with the technology trends. So as I was talking about the kind of the things like remote maintenance, remote monitoring of assets is really about being able to think differently about service delivery while overlaying digital technology on top of that. So there's no kind of one bucket where people need to be focusing on more. It's about addressing that convergence between service trends and technology to be able to actually deliver positive outcomes for customers and focus much more on selling positive outcomes, whether it's in terms of spending, of asset performance, of sustainability, of energy, whatever it may be, as opposed to just addressing sort of taking problems away from clients at lowest possible cost, which has perhaps been too much the expectation of clients in the past. But when we talk about outcomes, it's really interesting because actually it's important to remember that there's an awful lot of really important stuff that companies care about and that they're really trying to achieve when they talk about business outcomes for themselves that don't always make it into the tender document when they're looking to employ an FM provider. And I think this is super important to kind of really knowing what companies care about the most, what's changing, how you can help them achieve that outcome through the management of facilities or people or whatever it may be. And I think some of these have become more important than ever during COVID. I think managing sort of teams has become tougher for an awful lot of companies in the last 12 months, for example. So focusing on staff retention, on personal performance of individuals and satisfaction of employees and so on. Like I said, all kinds of stuff that may not always appear in the tender document or the prime conversation between a customer and supplier on the FM side, but ultimately keeping this in mind in kind of service delivery is absolutely important, and making sure that then translates through to what it means for the end customer, for the actual employee or the user of the services, so that you can deliver positive user experiences all the way down to whatever level within the client organization. And I think, again, all important things that I'm sure everyone can see on here that they would relate to either in their customers or in their own career. And I think, again, things like the working environment, health and wellness and so on have definitely seen an increase in focus in the last 12 months. But so have things, other things don't go on hold. People still want to enjoy their work. They want to be able to have fun at work. Is that as easy when people aren't seeing their colleagues as often as they normally would, either during lockdown periods or office closures, hardly seeing anyone at all, or moving into a world of flexible working or hybrid working, whatever it may be. How do we help deliver the kind of services to make sure that not only are companies hitting their goals, but that so are employees? And as these things change, collaboration is not as easy as it used to be. It's not just about setting up collaborative workspaces if people aren't spending as much time in those workspaces as they were before. Service providers have got to be thinking about the creative tools they can provide, whether it's digital tools or new ways of thinking for their clients to make sure that things like collaboration don't get left behind. Just some of you may, if any of you have seen me presenting before, you've seen me use this sort of slide a few times recently. I really like it. I think it's really relevant to our industry around sort of buildings and FM and so on. I think, as I said before, it's been a bit frustrating for the industry that the kind of technology innovation hasn't been accepted on the customer side quite as quickly as many of us would have liked or expected in recent years. But COVID has come along like a great wrecking ball and challenged people's thinking. The guys in the boardroom sitting there thinking, well, digital transformation, something we'll have to worry about a little bit further down the line, business as usual for now. COVID has delivered the kind of use cases that's enabled suppliers to start thinking differently. I won't go through all of these, but just a sort of a few areas where we see technology innovation as big impact at the moment in the FM world. One is around kind of different, enabling different types of business models, X as a service, bringing the kind of the value of data up on the agenda, so that monetizing data and enabling kind of digital service solutions, really important. Talked a bit about connectivity and cloud-based remote services before. Not just for kind of big technology like refrigeration and HVAC and so on, but also for management of all kinds of different parts of kind of building automation or lighting, whatever it may be, within the facility. So I think some really important areas for technology innovation. I know a lot of companies are thinking really hard about where they can take this at the moment, but I think that the positive message here is that what COVID has delivered is kind of the opportunity to think a little bit differently, and I think we've got to see that as a positive. It's as we start to come out of COVID, a lot of the talk will be around kind of recovery of spending and so on, but we're not going to see just a kind of explosion of growth in the near future. We know that. So what we've got to do is think a little bit differently. How can we look to sort of drive up margins? Where can we look to kind of increase competitiveness by bringing technology into play and so on? And when we talk about the kind of opportunities we're going to see in the next couple of years, quite a few are, just that I'm sort of sharing on this slide, a few are sort of more technology based, but quite a few are also just sort of making sure that we're kind of targeting the business in the right kind of way. Obviously, the kind of the back to work packages is relatively obvious, but what do we actually do around there? I've been really interested to see in the last kind of few months, a lot of the more creative providers in the UK market are actually not just talking about this kind of stuff with their clients, but building really dedicated packages so that they can kind of market themselves on the back of that, show to their clients that they're all over a deep understanding of exactly what customers are facing and likely to face over the next few months, not just for getting facilities back up and running, but for actually working with the organizations as consultants to sort of help manage staff expectations and kind of open the door to next steps of developing those kind of working packages. Obviously, likewise on the technical side, kind of switching on and ramping up technical performance of facilities. Talked a few times about the criticality of sustainability, and as I mentioned, certainly believe that's really important. But also some of the kind of more tech-based areas. I mean, I talked a bit before about things like remote operations, but also things like augmented operations. We've seen a lot of use, particularly in the industrial sort of area, and more on this kind of the manufacturing side, but also in kind of any areas where sort of more kind of technical services come into play. The use of sort of augmented operations, using augmented reality and virtual reality and so on to be able to make services more efficient at the same time as kind of improving the sort of the safety and the need to travel and so on of service technicians. So again, it's about kind of technology that's been evolving for a little while coming to the front when these kind of use cases or reasons for investing get stronger. Likewise with kind of contactless services, an awful lot of building occupiers are looking at all kinds of different technologies or services they can kind of deploy in their buildings to reduce the level of kind of human or kind of the levels to which users of buildings kind of interact with surfaces and so on. So lots of opportunities there. and data analytics, really the kind of everything that sits behind what we're seeing in kind of cloud-based services and IoT, going to play a really, really important role in the years ahead. So just looking to kind of wrap that up in terms of a few key conclusions. The slides from today, by the way, will be fully available for anybody who wants. So a few slides like this that are a bit more for reading than presenting, you can obviously take away. But just a few key points to pick off here. I mean, I think we see kind of really what COVID has done, while presenting some really significant financial challenges for the market, it's also brought along and accelerated some of the things that we were already beginning to see happen, which means that to kind of get out of this and grow strongly and perform well in the next few years is going to be about addressing innovation, about sort of taking on board kind of the message around digitalization and technology innovation and sustainability, etc. We do see that there'll be a significant bounce back in revenue this year of the overall market, as I mentioned earlier, although it is going to be tough for a little while. We don't see total spending getting back to pre-pandemic levels until early to mid next year. And I think we've got to remember that customers have been through a tough time as well. The reason that FM has been tough is that customers have been through a tough journey. They're looking for a way out. And I think addressing that as service providers that can kind of help customers navigate the next few years themselves is what it's going to be all about. So thank you. That's as much as I wanted to cover in presentation time, but I think we've hopefully now got a bit of time for questions and discussion.
I believe we do, John, and I just want to say a massive thank you on that. There was a wealth of information in there, and I appreciate how time flies. You realise how time does go, but the audience have been sending questions in, so I want to thank you for that. So I want to go straight into that because I'm aware of time, so I'm just going to open that up. I've got a question here from Nimmai. If that I've pronounced it wrong, my apologies. But what do you consider should be the top goals for facilities managers in relation to their employees and client at this current time and also in 2022? So a little bit of here and now, but also a bit of dangerous prediction, John, which I've had a webinar about the curse of predictions because sometimes it can be wrong. But is there anything you would like to add on the back of your presentation there for Nimmai around what we should consider to be the top goals for facilities managers now and in 2022?
Well, I guess we mean there for facility managers as in kind of FM suppliers, and I mean I think for me it's about innovation. It's the top goals are all around innovating. I mean from a customer point of view, in many ways it might sound a bit strange, but the priorities haven't necessarily changed. It's just what they need to focus on to achieve it that has changed. Customers are still looking for productivity, looking to kind of retain and motivate their staff and keep their businesses moving well. So from a service provider point of view, it's got to be around looking for all the different areas of innovation that can help drive those kind of efficiencies for clients at a time where revenue growth isn't so easy to find. So I think for me, it's about innovation, and that means innovation both on the technology side, but also on the kind of service delivery side, getting closer to clients, thinking of yourself as a consultant rather than a problem solver, than just doing what the customer thinks they've always wanted to have done, but being able to be that kind of partner to take customers on the next step of the journey.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm just grouping a couple of questions in one here about the role and influence of technology. Obviously, there was some overlap and parallels with both our presentations today around the role of technology and how it's now almost forced to change rather than embrace the change, which was some of the terminology, Peter, but that was some of the terms being used around tech. How important do you think tech is in terms of the industry, and how dare I say it, and I might be virtually shot for saying this, but in terms of how the industry moves because it wasn't early adopters of technology, it's probably safer saying it in those terms. So how does the forecast look for technology? And I know one of your later slides really went into detail on that, but how big of an influence is tech?
I think it is a big influence. I mean, it obviously depends on the customer group. It depends on the different types of services. There's still an awful lot of the core of FM is very much built around human interaction and people on site delivering services. And I don't think that'll completely change. I don't think technology is all about kind of robots replacing humans. It's about sort of enhancement. It's about augmenting and all those kind of things, and allowing us to deliver services slightly differently, more efficiently, to give customers more kind of control and insight to what's going on, and generating better data that can be used, and all those kind of things. So I think the overall answer is it's really important. If that's not too mundane a way of answering it, it is really important. And I think as I'd said before, it's not because we've seen a kind of we haven't suddenly had an opportunity to innovate more or kind of spend more time thinking about technology, because we've seen this kind of big push sort of happening over the last decade or so. It's about kind of addressing where sort of new opportunities to think a little bit differently around with customers have kind of come out as a result of the pandemic, and that's where we'll see the growth.
Thank you. I've got a question here from Nathan. I don't know how we didn't touch upon this within our presentations, but the role of legislation and policy, which does have an impact on most sectors across the UK. And I do answer an earlier question that the focus of the Outlook survey was UK. We do have Outlook surveys across other markets. So just to make a point on a couple of comments that have come in. Do any of the webinar hosts, that's us, John, just to clarify, feel the industry will be impacted by building safety bill, fire safety bill? I guess, I don't know, from your own perspective, is that something Frost and Sullivan heavily look at the influence of legislation, how this could change the profession moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to pretend we look at it in great detail and do kind of legislation evaluations or anything like that, because we don't really. But at the same time, we do look at what it can mean for individual companies and customers, and how it can kind of drive or restrain the market. And so I think at that level, then I think there's definitely likely to be an impact. And I think don't forget, I think it was on one of my slides earlier talking about the what matters most to companies, meaning customers, sort of in the FM sense. And I think the kind of the opportunity to deliver services that help customers navigate the complex legislative landscape, or as things change, is also one of the areas. It's not just about what it means for FM providers to operate within legislation. It's about being able to build services to help customers operate in a compliant way, or in a leading way, whatever it may be.
And it's worth pointing out to Nathan that as part of our NTT program, we have focused on the building safety manager. So we have 2 episodes dedicated to that, Nathan, that will be, which are available on the NTT website. So please have a look at them. They went into the build, the impacts, and also had a stellar panel discussing the issues. And I understand there is a third in the series due later this year. So again, that is something that we're seriously looking at from the Institute perspective. John, got another question here. We talk about positivity, but I'm going negative now, I'm afraid. But on the industries that are negatively impacted, it's that difficult, I can't even say it. Does Frost and Sullivan or yourself have a scale of recovery for those sectors? Which ones will recover sooner? So on your slides, you had some of the issues. So I used the crude term in my slide of winners and losers, which might not go down too well with some audience, but I'm quite blunt sometimes with my terminology. I guess that ties in with a number of questions that that have come in around which groups do you see performing well or need improving. I was going to use the word badly in 2021 and possibly 2022. So 2 questions in one there. Is that something you monitor? And also what particular industries do you think will be more successful than others? And I know that was touched upon in your presentation.
Yeah, I mean, it is something we look at, so I'd be delighted to sort of follow up conversation with anyone who wants to talk about that. It's probably a tough question to sort of really answer quickly, to be honest, because
No,
there's a lot of complexity behind it. But it's yes, we do, and I think just a couple of examples quickly. I mean, they're fairly obvious at one level, but the healthcare sector held up pretty well for the last 12 months and looks quite strong for the year ahead. But it's also a great example of when you look at every single sector, when you look at it, there's a lot of complexity. It's not just about looking at the health the sector. That can often be, when it comes to FM, you're talking about sort of, what other factors that may be driving or restraining the outsourcing trend within that sector. And healthcare is a good example. We saw overall sort of spending hold up really well last year, and some really interesting new contract wins and so on. But we also saw a number of NHS contracts revert to in-house delivery during the course of last year that were previously outsourced contracts. So even in a sector that was quite buoyant, it didn't necessarily universally mean good news, if you see what I mean. So it's kind of, first step is to kind of look sector by sector, see what the growth outlook looks and recovery profile looks like for that sector. And then the next is to scratch beneath the surface and see if there are other sort of trends that then kind of indicate good or bad opportunities just beneath that.
No, and this will be my last question, and we touched upon it in both our presentations around occupancy and working strategies. So we referred between flexible working, hybrid working, but I'm going to go with hybrid working because that seems to be the questions coming in, and it nicely tied in with, do you think there are opportunities for FM to support home workers, and how do you think that will impact not only our surveys, including our own Outlook survey that might have to look at our question set of how we evolve that over time? Like any questionnaire, it will change with factors that drive those changes. But for you, is there any early indications of the role FM when it comes to home working? Because that's obviously something tying in with the whole debate about hybrid working and how you get the perfect balance between those in the office and those at home.
Yeah, I think the short answer for me is yes, there definitely is. And we're already, talking to a lot of customer organizations. They're very interested in finding out how service providers can help them both manage and deliver flexible or hybrid working for their employees. So I think at one level, yes, there definitely is. The second part of the answer is, but it's quite difficult for FM companies because it's a very, very different way of delivering services. Now, that's probably sounds reasonably obvious, but from a kind of what actually needs to be done point of view, I think FM companies are well positioned to talk the language, help with the health and safety of workers at home, having the right equipment, tools, training, etc. But the delivery of services into such a sort of huge number of sites is what becomes difficult. So I think there's some quite interesting opportunities for partnership and collaboration of working with different types of organisation. There's a lot of companies out there from nothing to do with the FM world who are extremely adept at delivering sort of services to services or products, whatever it is, to the home. And I wouldn't be surprised if there were some interesting partnerships in the year ahead between sort of delivery type services or whatever, and FM companies where the FM companies can provide the expertise and kind of the actual service delivery, but they most of them are not equipped at the moment to suddenly be individually going out to visit millions of home workers. So it could be a really interesting partnership area.
No, and certainly I think that's something that was echoed in our own Microsoft report that's available on our website that talked about the art of the possible and the power of partnerships, and that was in relation to tech. But certainly the same could be applied with the hybrid working debate.
Exactly.
Now, we have had a raft of questions in, John, but I'm looking at the clock and we're 2 minutes over. So I'm just going to say to the audience, sorry for those that we didn't get to your questions. I will pass the questions on to John for those that we didn't get through, and we will get back in touch. But at this point, John, I just want to say a massive thank you for joining us today. Your presentation was very insightful, like many of our episodes, but particularly this one. I think we could have gone on for another hour, but I'm afraid of time we can't. But if there are any questions going forward, please get in touch. And obviously, I'm in contact with John. John is on LinkedIn as well. So from that point of view, if you want to connect, please do. That's the purpose of LinkedIn. But John, a massive thank you. Very informative presentation, and thank you once again. So
thank you, Peter. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for the chance to join today.
No worries. So thank you again. So yeah, I just got a couple of closing slides for the listeners, viewers, you'd be pleased to know. Where the Outlook survey will be housed is on our Insight Hub, which also has dedicated content hubs around sustainability, I hasten to add. Research reports, which I alluded to a couple of times, particularly the Microsoft and Plan On recent guidance that's been launched that link in with the technology debate, good practice guides, guidance notes, and more, including the episodes, which will be this one, 43, shortly will be uploaded. So please have a look out for that. So again, COVID-19, yes, a running theme through navigating turbulent times. I'm afraid we do have a dedicated page that's regularly updated to keep up to date with policy legislation as well coming out of government. So please look out for that. As I say, it's regularly updated, so that should keep you up to date with the latest guidance emerging and obviously the return to work. Now, on the positive side, we call these Navigating Turbulent Times, but we've recently launched our Iwfm Conference 2021, and the theme's about emerging stronger. Yes, guys, a positive vibe coming out of our conference, and that's on the 13th of September. It is a hybrid event. Yes, he's used that hybrid word again, so it will be virtual and physical. We'd love to see you join us there at St. Paul's in London, but those tickets are available. We have launched the first 2 speakers, so please look on the website to find out who they are, and we will be soon announcing the rest of the program. Again, linking in with 2 massive themes we discussed today. We've got a stellar lineup and 2 particular speakers that will be focusing about, well, I can talk about what the diversity and inclusion, technology, sustainability and future of work. So there you go, a nice synergy of what you've heard for the last hour. So please join that conference. We've got a stellar lineup. And lastly, I started with a happy birthday to Navigating Turbulent Times. As I said, this is a year on that we've been running our weekly episodes, and this was 43 in the series. So 44 will be next week and will be announced on Friday. But as I always do, I want to say a massive thank you once again to John. But lastly, to the viewers, listeners that join our webinars, again, we encourage you to join these. It's an hour of your time. Hopefully you get some insight. Hopefully from today you did, particularly from our own primary research, as well as Frost and Sullivan around workplace and the FM profession moving forward. And also I would like to just encourage you to complete a post survey. That's not just to rate today's episode, but exactly what you want from these episodes moving forward. We have listened, we have acted, and we've built our program around our members and non-members viewpoints on these webinars. So please complete the survey. It really does help us with our program. So once again, a massive thank you. I hope you have a good rest of the day and week, and hope to see you on our next episode. Thank you once again.